So today we are going to talk about digital accessibility. There's a number of topics we'll cover today, but we won't dive into the weeds of exactly what the technical requirements are. That'll be at a training later on. My name is Sarah Schaub. I am the Web Services Manager here at Connors, and we support all of Connors and WSU Extension. We have 3 members on our team. On the web team, a web developer and a web content coordinator. Alex Powers is our content coordinator, and she's also on this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be reviewing them as we go through the webinar. If I don't address it during the webinar, then we will definitely have some time at the end of the training to answer some questions. So today's topics are, we're going to talk about what is digital accessibility, what the benefits are of digital accessibility. We'll highlight what all of the WSU policies are, Washington state law, and federal requirements regarding digital accessibility. We'll talk about what content is included in those requirements, what the exceptions are to those requirements, what it means for you and the content that you create. Kind of high level where we're at as a college regarding digital accessibility, and then what resources are available to you. So first, let's talk about what digital accessibility is. It refers to the practice of designing and developing digital content, applications, and services in a way that ensures they can be used by everyone, including people with disabilities. It means creating an inclusive digital environment where all employees, students, and visitors can access and interact with digital resources without barriers. So just a little fact I found that I thought would be good to share before we jump into this training as well. The number of people with disabilities in the United States, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, is that 1 in 4 people living in the US have some form of a disability. So it's just a good frame of reference when we're talking about our audience and who this might apply to. And you can find that stat by referencing the CDC website at www.cdc.gov. So now we want to talk about what are the benefits of digital accessibility. This is not a comprehensive list by any means. There are a lot of benefits to digital accessibility, but access for all people, a better user experience, legal compliance, better search rankings on the web, and a positive brand image are all benefits of digital accessibility. Now I'm going to jump into what the laws and policies are regarding digital accessibility. So currently we have Washington State User 01 Accessibility Policy, formerly known as Policy 188. This policy establishes the expectation for state agencies that people with disabilities have access to and use of information and data, and can be provided access to the same services and content that is available to persons without disabilities, unless providing direct access is not possible due to technical or legal limitations. So Washington state law requires that we follow what's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, level 2.1, or version 2.1, level AA standard. We're not going to dive into what the standards are specifically. It's the technical standard we're required to meet, but I'll just reference that now so you know that there's a specific technical requirement we must follow. This policy was actually approved at March 10th of 2020. And you can refer to, oops, didn't mean to move that slide ahead. Went forward a couple here. Okay, so you can reference the Washington State User 01 Accessibility Policy at watech.wa.gov/policies/accessibility-policy. And then the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines were developed by the Worldwide Web Consortium, and their website for reference regarding the WCAG 2.1 level AA standards can be accessed at www.w3.org. /TR/WCAG21. That'll be a reference that you'll want to probably bookmark at some point because you'll probably be referencing it. So now we'll talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act requires that state and local governments give people with disabilities an equal opportunity to benefit from all their programs, services, and activities. The big thing that we're hearing a lot about, and that many of you have probably heard about recently, is that on April 24th of 2024, the Federal Register published the Department of Justice's final rule updating its regulations for Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the final rule has specific requirements about how to ensure that web content and mobile applications, or web apps, are accessible to people with disabilities. This is a really big deal. And the reason for that is we have not been required by the Department of Justice to follow a specific technical standard until now. We have already been required to follow that same technical standard through Washington State, but it hasn't been enforced as of this point. So a really great reference for anyone interested in reading more about the final rule of the ADA Title II regulations. You can reference that at www.ada.gov. And there's a lot of new information that's been posted about the new regulation on the website. And now I'm going to talk about Washington State University policies. So we have a couple of policies in place that are in support of Washington State policy and also federal regulation. So Washington State University is dedicated to creating an inclusive and accessible environment for everyone involved in its programs or services, including students, staff, faculty, and visitors, as outlined in the University Accessibility Statement, which you can access the University Accessibility Statement at access.wsu.edu for the full statement. So this commitment includes ensuring that electronic information technology is accessible to users with disability. And we'll define that here in just a moment, what's included in electronic information technology. But for now, you can reference EP07, Electronic and Information Technology, or EIT, Accessibility Policy, that's the WSU policy, or BPPM 85.55, Ensuring Electronic and Information Technology Accessibility. Both of those policies can be referenced on the WSU policies.wsu.edu website, listed underneath BPPM or EP07. So I keep going back on my slides here, my apologies. Forward. Okay. So the big question, what is included in electronic information technology? A lot of times people hear digital accessibility and they think, oh, this just applies to websites. And that's not the case. The new ADA Title II regulations, those apply to websites and web applications, but that's whatever's posted on a website or on a web application. An information kiosk could be considered a website. Any documents that get posted on a website are included in that. But what's important to note is that Washington State policy and WSU policy includes electronic information technology. And so that includes not only websites, but also documents, videos, webinars, podcasts or audio, course materials, information kiosks, mobile apps, password protected content, as well as email. And you can reference that list of what's included on the policies.wsu.edu website. And under 8555, there is a reference to the list that I'm pointing to here, or that I'm discussing, of what's included in that information technology. Now I see, I'm going to look at the chat really quick. It looks like there might be a couple of questions. Nope, it looks like Alex was posting some of those links. Thank you, Alex. Okay. So exceptions under the ADA rule. So there are some. And so this is important, especially for people who are updating their website to meet the new requirements. There is going to be some content, forgive my typo here, I've got a couple of them. There is going to be some content that you do not need to update. So more specifically around documents. And so this is just the highlight of what is listed under the exception, but I'll dive into the details of that here in just a moment. So archived web content, it has to meet certain criteria to be considered archived web content. Pre-existing conventional electronic documents, again, there's certain requirements listed underneath that exception that all have to be met in order for it to be an exception. And then content posted by a third party where the third party is not posting due to contractual licensing or other arrangements. So I'll get into the details of that. So just to start, an example would be if you are paying an outside developer to create a website for you, as opposed to using a WSU contact for that, that vendor would still need to follow the WCAG requirements. If it's a WSU site or a WSU affiliated site and it's associated with WSU or owned by WSU, it has to meet the standards. Individualized documents that are password protected, those do not need to be updated. And then again, pre-existing social media posts, that's good news. We don't have to go back and update all of our pre-existing social media posts. We just have to ensure that what we post moving forward is accessible. So what does this mean for you? So all WSU employees who create and publish digital content are responsible for making sure their content is accessible and provides an inclusive experience. This involves a commitment to accessibility policies, regular training, and the use of accessible design and development practices for all digital platforms. And we're going to get into some resources for you that are going to point you in the right direction for how to access some of those resources. So I'm going to kind of go through the rest of this PowerPoint, and then I'm going to kind of get into the exceptions a little bit deeper because a lot of people have questions about that. So I will come back to that. I just want to let the group know. So where we're at now is we have more than 200 Connors and extension websites. Many, or if not most, are not fully accessible, mostly due to the amount of documents that we have posted on them. That seems to be the biggest barrier. As of Friday of this last week, I've located more than 40 YouTube channels that are affiliated, that's just channels, not videos, that are affiliated with Connors and Extension. These will all need to be reviewed to ensure compliance. It's going to be a big effort on all of our part. Podcasts that are hosted by a third-party vendor that are many are not compliant. So we're looking into alternatives for hosting, just as an update for this group. And then more than 1,000 WSU Extension publications. Side note, the WSU publication store is being redesigned right now, and the new publication store will be launched in the next month or so. Anything that's not considered compliant will be archived, and there will be an opportunity to update that publication to meet the compliance standards. This is a very conservative estimate. I would say it's probably closer to 20 or 30,000 documents. We have more than that posted across various websites, most of which are not accessible and will need to be deleted or updated at some point. And we can help you identify what those are. Again, I'll get into that in the details of the exceptions here in a minute. Look at the chat. Does this include social media? Thank you, Alex, for answering the question. Social media will need to be accessible from now on, but you do not need to go back and make posts accessible. Thank you, Alex, for posting the link to the exceptions. And then I'll also share at the end some good resources for you that have guides for social media and some other guides for video and other things that are in development on the WSU Accessibility website. So where we are now, we have a couple of committees established. There's a Connors Digital Accessibility Compliance Committee. We established in September. We are meeting 1 to 2 times monthly, and we have ad hoc committees working on publications, web and video podcasts, resources. There will be some changing processes and policies coming out and being published shortly. One of them is the publication process, and there's a new publications template that will be provided for people who are submitting publications for peer review. So stay tuned for that. When those resources are available, you will receive an email from the college, from the web team to the college, when those new resources are available and those new policies are updated. Additionally, we have a WSU Digital Accessibility Committee, and we're meeting monthly. Currently being updated is BBPM 8555. That policy is in review and being updated to make sure that it completely complies with the new ADA Title II ruling. Communication planning, a comprehensive communication plan is in the works for the entire WSU community regarding what all of these requirements are, how they affect the work that you do, how you can get support, and how you can access resources to move forward. We're identifying resources and hopefully some funding resources. No guarantees on that, as we all know, the budget is tight. And then we are also working on expanding the how-to guides that are located on the wsu.edu/digital accessibility website. So we'll be sharing more of that soon with the Connors and university community. So what you can do to make sure you are making and publishing accessible content. You'll definitely want to take a full review of what the WSU policies are and the Washington state law and federal guidelines. You'll want to familiarize yourself with the WSU Digital Accessibility website. We'll provide you with a link on that. On that website, there is a focus on what's called the core concepts of digital accessibility, and they cover some of the main things that you can focus on to make all of your content accessible, from a heading structure to descriptive link text. And that applies to all digital platforms, whether it's documents, web, whatever it is that you're developing your digital content. Take a training. Thank you for showing up today. We're glad that you're here. We'll be talking about this a lot over the coming months, and we'll be getting into more detailed trainings about specific topics as the year progresses. We will be hosting a webinar the third Tuesday of every month for the rest of this year. So keep joining us for that. All will be recorded, made accessible, and then posted at a later date on our Connors YouTube channel. What you can do is start making your content accessible now. And this might require you to take basics of document accessibility training. We have recently posted a training on how to make your Word documents accessible that we provided to the Connors community a couple of months ago, and that is on our YouTube channel and available for viewing. So if you're not familiar, it's a good introductory to how to use all of the built-in tools with Microsoft Word and use the accessibility built-in tools that will help you to make your documents accessible. So what you can expect to see in the coming months from the university and from Connors and Extension, our committee will have a lot more communication coming out. If you have not subscribed to the announcements from the Connors web team, please do so. We send out a weekly email on Tuesdays with recent updates, links to upcoming trainings or past trainings that we've recorded. There's a number of good updates in there regarding digital accessibility and just basic web support. And then also, like I mentioned before, the university has put together a comprehensive communication plan. Communication is being done at the leadership level as of right now with chancellors, with campus directors. And so our leadership team is being communicated with regarding these requirements and what's likely going to come and be needed for support at the level of departments and colleges and units. So that'll start coming out this month. So you'll start seeing some communication from the university level about that. So how can we help? So through the Web Service Center, there's a number of things that we can do to support you in your digital accessibility journey. We can provide training and resources. We offer Open Lab every week at 11 a.m., 11 to 12. That link we send that out on Tuesdays, but it's also posted on the Connors Connors Marketing and Communications website. And I'll provide the URL for that here shortly. We can help assist in conducting a site accessibility check and consultation. So if you're not sure where to start, we can meet with you and show you where to start, how to evaluate your site and determine how to use some of the tools that are available, like the Wave tool. Again, we won't get into that today specifically, but we will be providing a training in the future for how to use some of those tools. So how you can help is just start becoming familiar with digital accessibility best practices, starting with that digital accessibility website that is provided by the university. Oops, keep accidentally. And then encourage your unit, anyone you know that is creating documents, sharing documents on the website or via course materials. There will be specific faculty trainings available that are being worked on currently that's applied to Canvas. So stay tuned for some more information coming out about that. And then where you want to start for resources is going to be wsu.edu/digital accessibility. That is the university-wide digital accessibility website. The next year, that digital accessibility website is going to be significantly expanded. There are how-to guides being written as of right now to expand the support for the university community on that website. Additionally, you can visit the Connors Communications website, and that URL is communications.connors.wsu.edu/digital accessibility resources. And there's a number of resources on that site, from, a frequently asked questions page to how to make your documents accessible. Also links to our Connors YouTube channel that has video training tutorials. And then also we have a lot of written documentation available on our website. And now I'm going to look in the chat and see if there's anything that still needs to be answered. Looks like Alex has just been posting those resources in the chat for the things that I've mentioned. Thank you for doing that, Alex. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for questions before I dive into some of those more specifics about the exceptions to the rule. Does anybody have any questions for what I just covered?
Thanks, Sarah. I have a question. So this has to be completed by when for like our websites?
So that's a good question. Technically, we should already be in compliance because it is Washington state law. The good news is that as of right now, there's been no citations that we know of through Washington state. So the ADA guidelines go into effect for our university in April of 2026. I believe it's April 24th of 2026. So we have a little over a year to meet the federal requirements. Don't stress out, I'm told, as long as we're making continuous improvement and progress, that's going to be the best case scenario for us. It's not likely that we'll get everything addressed before that deadline. But over the next year, there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to get support with that. The other thing I forgot to mention is that in about a month or two, the Connors Web team, we have gotten the approval to purchase software for websites called PopeTech, and we will be connecting all of our websites to that software, and it scans the website and generates a report on not all of the accessibility issues, but it will catch some of the most critical errors on the website and provide some direction for where to get started. So those reports will be set up, and then we'll set them up to go to whoever the website owner and content creators are for that website specifically. So we'll be working with different units and departments and extension counties to get those reports set up to regularly be sent to their team members. That'll really help you get started on the web portion. It does not scan documents. It will find broken links. So the documents will be more of a manual process. But again, before you dive into the document update frenzy, let's talk about what the exceptions to the rule are for what doesn't need to be updated. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. So you can access this website at ada.gov/resources/2024-03-08-web-rule. And then hashtag summary of exceptions if you want to jump down to the summary of exceptions part of the page. There's a lot of good information here. What's important to note is for archived web content. So if you have a section on your website, say of like old newsletters, you want to keep all of them listed on your website, but you don't want to update them. You can do that as long as all 4 of the following points here that are listed, and I'll read them just for anyone who might not be able to see the screen. So web content that meets all 4 of the following points would not need to meet WCAG 2.1 level AA. The content was created before the date. The state or local government must comply with this rule or reproduce paper documents or the contents of other physical media, audio tapes, film negatives, and CD-ROMs, for example, and were created before the government must comply with this rule. And the content is kept only for reference, research, or record keeping. And the content is kept in a special area for archived content. And the content has not been changed since it was archived. So all 4 of those have to be the case in order for it to fall underneath the exception of archived content. And then there's an example, a water quality report from 1998 that a state has stored in an archive section of its website and has not updated, would probably fall under the exception. The exception would also probably apply to handwritten research notes or photos that go with the 1998 water quality report that the state scans and posts to its website in the archive section. The exception does not apply unless all 4 points are present. And so I'm not going to go through all of these additional examples since we've provided the link to this resource. Additionally, I will share, there's a recent training that was put on by the Department of Justice that was really great, that dove into the exceptions and gave a lot of different examples of exceptions. And we'll share the link to that to this group as well. It was a 1-hour webinar put on by the Department of Justice and posted to their YouTube channel, all about this new rule. So the other exception is pre-existing conventional documents. But what's really important to note about this is that you have to read further on. It has to meet both of the following points. Documents that meet both of the following points usually do not need to meet the WCAG 2.1 level AA, except in some situations. So number 1, the documents are word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet files, and they were available on the state or local government's website or mobile app before the date the state or local government must comply with this rule. What's important to note about this, though, is the exception does not apply unless both points are present. Where either point is missing, the document generally needs to be updated. Also, when the exception does not apply, this is really important. Further on down in the exception, it says, documents that are currently being used to apply for, access, or participate in a state or local government services, programs, or activities do not fall under the exception, even if the documents were posted before the date the government has to comply with the rule. An example, a state posted a PDF version of a business license application on its website in 2020. Members of the public still use that PDF to apply for a business license after the date the state has to comply with the rule. The exception would not apply to the application, and it would usually need to meet WCAG 2.1 level AA standards. And the reason is because it's still a resource currently being used to apply for something. So if it's used to participate in a program, apply for a program, or to gain access to a program, it must be made compliant. So make sure you don't ignore this last part of the second exception, because some people have said, oh, well, I don't have to update it because it was created before the date and, you know, it was available on the website before the date, so I don't have to update it. That's not true. But that is good news in a lot of cases that you have old reference or resource material on your website. As long as it's accurately labeled as an archived section of your website, it does not need to be updated. The other important exception is number 3, content posted by a third party where the third party is not posting due to contractual, licensing, or other arrangements with a public entity. So third parties, sometimes post content on state and local governments' websites or mobile apps. Third parties are members of the public or others who are not controlled by or acting for state and local governments. The state or local government may not be able to change the content third parties post. Content that is posted by third parties on a state or local government's website or mobile app would not need to meet WCAG 2.1 level AA. An example of this is a message that a member of the public posts on a town's online message board would probably fall under the exception. What does not fall under the exception would be if someone from, say, the Department of Health sent you a PDF and they want you to post it on your website. You would be responsible if that content lives in your media library. If somebody wants you to share information about their program, it's always best to probably just link to their website wherever they have that information, and that takes the liability and the responsibility away from your content. So there's some exceptions. There's some examples here that I'm not going to get into. I'll let you read those exemptions under the examples under the exception for yourself. And I'll jump into the fourth one, individualized documents that are password protected. That's not a common occurrence with WSU, but what it doesn't apply to is like password protected websites. That's a common question that we get. What if our website is password protected and it's only intended for our master gardeners? You still have to make that content accessible because we don't know if any of our master gardeners might have digital accessibility needs, and we still have to meet the requirement. And then the last exception is pre-existing social media posts. We don't have to go back and update what's old. We just have to update what is what we create moving forward. And so now really quick, before I open it up for any more questions, I'm going to jump over to the digital accessibility website. The URL for that, for the university digital accessibility website, is wsu.edu/digital accessibility. This is where you should start. Page 1, homepage. There is a section called Where to Begin, and then a link to get started. And it talks about the fundamentals of digital accessibility, what the core concepts are, and then again, all the policies are listed there for you to review. If you create any digital content, soon it will be required for all WSU employees to take what's called the Digital Accessibility Assessment. Currently, that is being added to Percipio and will start to be a requirement university-wide. But just to test your knowledge, or if you manage any websites or do any digital content now, you might want to consider taking that training now and getting it current. There is a link to that on the homepage. And then testing tools and guides. This is a section that provides information on different tools you can use that will help you test the accessibility of your website. One really good resource is the WebAIM, or rather the WAVE Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. You can access that website at wave.webaim.org. You can use this tool. You can paste a link to your web page in this URL box, this empty box, and it'll scan your page and it'll generate a report telling you what some of the big issues are with your website. I'm happy to demonstrate that here in a moment if we don't have any questions. And then there's other tools listed here on this page for Word and PDFs, Canvas, color contrast checkers. And then under the guides section of the website, this section will really grow this next year. There's a content committee focused on developing further how-to guides in this section. But right now there is documents and presentation guide. So this has information on creating an accessible Microsoft Word document or creating an accessible PDF with a number of resources to other additional training opportunities or written documentation related to those topics. And then underneath the social media page, there is specific information about how to write social media posts, how to post and upload documents, hashtags and how you should address those, the use of emojis. And and then information on images, images with text, animated videos and GIFs. And then down at the bottom of this page, there's some information about video requirements for social media. And then at the very bottom of the page, there are links to specific information related to the social media channels. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, and X, and YouTube. So there's links to those platform pages that talk more about digital accessibility for that platform specifically. We are not responsible for YouTube being accessible, just what we post on our YouTube-owned channel, for example. And that same rule goes to apply for all of our social media channels. We're only responsible for the content that we post and publish. And then there's a really great resources page linked under the guides section as well, that includes a lot of additional information that you can kind of dive into and do some more learning around benefits and return on investment, e-learning, universal design, suggestions on procurement when looking at software and things like that. Again, you can always reach out to the Connors Web team by filling out our Connors Web support form. That's communications.connors.wsu.edu/web services/web support-form. If you need help, you can fill that out, or you can just email us directly at connors.web.support@wsu.edu. Or is that right? Yes. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to see, does anybody have any questions about what I've shared, or any additional topics that maybe I didn't cover? Alex is a rock star, posting all those links in the chat. Any questions? Emails, okay, so Christy had a question. Emails need to be accessible, but what about Teams messages, direct messages? You know, that's a really good question, Christy. I don't know about Teams messages and direct messages. I would it's digital content. I would assume it needs to be accessible. So sharing files internally, that's included. I do know that. So if you're using a shared team folder space with multiple members of faculty, staff, or students, then those documents are supposed to be accessible. But where I would start would not be there. I would start with high traffic, like accessible, visible areas. So a good way to tackle it would be, you know, the most visited pages on your website. What's accessible and viewable to the most people on a public platform, and start there and work your way down. But definitely start to learn how to create accessible documents. On that resource page that we shared for our website, there is a link to creating more digitally accessible emails for Outlook. A quick Google search, how do I make my emails accessible? I mean, that's how I usually find resources, is always helpful. And there's some specific suggestions for how to accomplish that. Gary, it looks like you have a question.
Hi.
Hey.
A couple of our 4-H committees use Google Docs a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If they're using it internally for committee work, does that require the ADA compliance?
Yes, because the rule applies for it's information, it's electronic information technology. Documents fall under that. It doesn't matter whether we're sharing them internally or externally, they need to comply. And so that's Word, Google. I mean, that's why I think they define it as word processing documents or spreadsheets or presentations. So regardless of what, whether you're using Google or Microsoft or any of those things, they need to be accessible. And usually it's relatively easy to make those documents accessible. It's more about making sure that you're following the core concepts of digital accessibility. We are diving into the core concepts next month for our webinar, where we're going to cover what all those core concepts are and how they relate to the content that you create. whether it's the web or documents. We are also doing a training tomorrow at 11 a.m. for how to make your PowerPoint presentations accessible if anyone on the call is interested in attending that. I do plan to record that one and make it accessible. It does take time for us to make the videos accessible because we do have to update the closed captioning and make sure that everything meets the requirements. So does that answer your question, Gary?
It helps.
Okay.
Also, they sometimes use Google Docs to register for events. So all of those are going to have to just be compliant as well. And I guess the last question is, since Google Docs is kind of a different thing, are there any specific trainings or resources that that group of people in our office can access to meet the requirements?
That's a good question. So I haven't done a lot of research into how to make Google documents accessible. I don't have an answer for you really on that. I do know it's really difficult to make a fillable form in Microsoft Word accessible, and we're really encouraging people to transition to Gravity Forms, which is an online form tool that is available to everyone in WordPress. Everyone in Connors and Extension has access to use that. We do have training available. It's a really easy online form tool. It's drag and dropped for setting it up, name, email. You know, we can help with that transition, but whenever possible, we're really encouraging people to set up an online form as opposed to a document form. It just removes any added barriers for people to fill it out. And it's a lot easier to make an online form accessible than it is to make a document accessible, especially if it's a fillable form. And let's see. I think we had another question. Okay, so Tracy has a question. I've been using Canva to develop social media content. Are you aware of any ways that Canva graphics, flyers would need to be designed or addressed differently than documents like PDFs, PowerPoints, etc. before being posted? So all images, Trisha, any images that you post need to have descriptive alternative text. So that image, you need to accurately describe to a user that's not sighted what that image is and what information it's conveying. It's not good or best practice to have graphics that have words and content on them, like written content, because a screen reader can't access that unless it's reflected in the alternative text. As far as PowerPoints go, if you're using Canva to create a PowerPoint, you would need Adobe Acrobat in order to make sure that that PDF was accessible. I don't have a lot of experience with Canva, but I can tell you that it doesn't convert nicely to a PDF that's accessible. So you would need to learn how to create or rather remediate a PDF to be accessible using Adobe Acrobat. We have those resources posted on our website that kind of direct you to the Adobe website that tell you how to do that. And then thank you, Alex. Alex posted the Google Docs support. So how to make your Google Docs accessible, some more information on that. Alex has posted a link in the chat. And then Katarina had a question. If we have the information in the alt text and the same info in the email contents, would the written content be okay? Yes. So if you have the information also in the email, in addition to in the image, yes, that is acceptable. And then Linda had a question. How detailed must the alternative text for the image description be? It depends on the context, Linda. A general description is usually, sufficient. It all depends on the context of the page. So for example, if it's, if it's just decorative and it's not really adding any specific information to the page, then you can mark it as decorative. But if it has, say, a group of people, and you want people to know who's in that photo, then either in the caption or in the alternative text, you would want to describe in order from left to right who's in that image. So how best case really is to think about how would I describe this image to someone who can't see it? And that's the best advice I can give you on that. And thank you, Alex has posted the link to the core concept for images. There's a lot of good information that tells you how to create, or rather what you need to do to make sure your images are accessible depending on where you're posting them. But the same rules apply whether you're doing, whether it's in a PDF or it's in a Word document or it's on the web, it needs to have descriptive alternative text where necessary.
I was also going to cut in, so like images that are screenshots of like newsletters and stuff, probably not accessible because you're not going to be able to convey that amount of information, or like a PDF example, like of a document, that amount of information in an alternative text. If it's more simplified, especially like for the web, like it's a little button and it says Facebook, and if you click that, it goes to Facebook. That's simpler to make it for alternative text for embedded text and images, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Alex. Gary, what's your question?
This time I'm from media, and we've got some closed Facebook program sites that are just for horse or livestock or something like that. Again, it comes back to 4-H. When we post things on there, we're going to follow the ADA rules. What about when a member from the community posts a picture of kids winning an award? What do we do then?
We don't need to do anything. We don't have to monitor. So if you're allowing people to post content, you're only responsible for the content that you create and that you post on your channel. So if other people are commenting or submitting information, the rule doesn't apply. But if you're, is that what you're referring to? If somebody's posting a comment with an image or, comment, or do you have members of the public who are allowed to make public posts on your site?
Yes. Well, they're
Okay.
allowed to make posts on the Facebook page.
So if they're allowed to make posts on the Facebook page, they need to be compliant because the Facebook page is owned by 4-H Extension. So we're responsible for the content that gets posted as the user and as the owner, but we're not responsible for what people comment.
So comments are not a problem, but if they want to put a picture of the livestock judging team in Denver, it has to be ADA compliant.
So they would need to provide the proper alternative text for those images.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
Or just the caption, like somebody said earlier, right? If, say, I'm the one posting that picture and I just write, my quick little description is 5 4-H kids win top honors at such and such show.
Yes, that would
That
be
would be
appropriate,
sufficient?
Linda. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. What other questions? Well, does anybody want me to do a quick demonstration of using the Wave tool to check a web page?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is a really great tool. So I'll just, I'm not picking on this site. I just know that they're currently in the review process. So I know that they have some issues on their live site, but they're all being fixed on the stage site. So I'm just going to use this one as an example. King County. And again, they're fixing all of the, what might be the issue here. So I'll pull up a page and share my screen.
You mentioned that they're in the review stage. Do we need to reach out to you guys to get a review, or how does that, or do we just review it?
So we have a web page on our Connors Marketing and Communications site. Let's see if Alex would mind dropping the chat. It's how to prepare for a website migration. And so if you have a county site and you have not yet met with our team, start with reading that page. It has very specific instructions and directions for what to do in order to prepare to migrate your site from the theme that it's currently on to the web design system. And so start there, and then you can reach out to our team and we'd be happy to meet with you and kind of further walk through the process, answer any questions you might have, and kind of go from there. I think we have about maybe close to half of the counties are in the review stage. So they've met with us, they're reviewing their content, making sure everything is updated, and they're getting ready for us to migrate their site to the new web design system. So start there. So this page, I'm on the wave.webaim.org site. And so when you go here to this site, you can paste a URL. There's the web page address box that you can enter it into. And so I'm going to paste the King County extension URL and then just hit enter. And then it's going to take a minute to scan the page and generate a report. And the results are going to populate over here. There's a summary section in the left-hand side. And just to start, you can see there's 10 errors. That's a fail. Sometimes though, when you get into the details, which I'll show you how to read this report here in a second, there's more information and it'll tell you what the rule is, what it means, why it's wrong, how to fix it. So there's really good information using this tool, and it's just a free online tool. And then it looks like there's 16 alerts on here. So underneath, right next to the summary section is a tab for the details section. So at the very top, you can see the first one says 3 missing alternative text. So there's 3 images on this page that are missing alternative text. If you select the little red icon, it'll take you down to the image that it's referencing. And I'm trying to see, where's the alternative text that's missing here? Oh, so it's right up here at the top in this, looks like it's in their rotator. There's 3 images in this rotator and they're missing the alternative text. And so that's what this first one is referencing, is this carousel header that rotates with images and information. Let's see, one map area missing alternative text. So I'm going to select this to go down to this area, and I'm not seeing where that is on the page. Oh, I think it's this map area and it's not fully expanded. So this map is missing alternative text. And it looks like it's an embedded Google map, which oftentimes is not recommended. It's recommended that you just link out to the Google site, because otherwise you're going to have an accessibility issue when you start embedding code on your page that may or may not be accessible. And so then it looks like we have a couple of empty links on the page. When I select these, it looks like, again, it's referencing this top carousel image rotator that it looks like these have empty links for some reason. So that would need to be adjusted or looked at. And again, if you don't know how to update or how to look at some of these things, when you do get the errors, you are welcome to, join Open Lab or reach out to our team, and then we'd be happy to help you kind of figure out what's going on here. So we've got a couple of empty links here. So it looks like there's an A tag, which is a link tag, and then there's nothing listed in there. So this causes usability issues for somebody, say, using a screen reader. They're going to think there's a link here, and then they could get stuck on the page and not be able to tab all the way through the content. So that would be an issue. It looks like, though, one thing they are doing well is their use of headers. They've got their header 1, although it's not identifying it as a header 1 for some reason. And then they've got their header 2s here, and it looks like they have alternative text here for the Food Safety in a Minute podcast. Plant problems, although I would recommend there's empty alternative text here. They're considering it decorative, which is perfectly fine. And then water quality resources, again, this image could be considered decorative based on the context. And so this has empty alternative text as well. So that is fine. This, I think, is being flagged for color contrast issues. That's not something you have control over, because with the update with the new theme, that'll be fixed. So you can ignore that in these buttons. the SNAP Ed and the agriculture, water, and natural resources, that green and yellow are no longer compliant with brand anyways. And then let's see, it looks like there's redundant link text on a page. That's just a warning or an alert. It's not considered, I did forget to show you the reference tab for each one of these. I'll do that here in a second. Redundant title text. So if you have two links next to each other that are going to the same place, it'll often flag it as redundant link text. Or for example, if you have, say you had 4-H youth development linked 3 times in this paragraph, then it would be flagged for redundant link text. And that just can, it's not a failure, but it can add a user issue or an issue for a user using screen reader technology. So those are just some of the things that will get flagged. You can just click on the icons to get a little bit more. There's next to the details panel, there is a reference section, and this will tell you what the icon means, why it matters, and then what to do about it. And then also it'll link to the standard and guideline related to that requirement. So this will take you, that's the nice part, is it'll take you to more details on the WebAIM.org website that goes further into the standard and what that means and why it's an issue, and then also what the success criteria is associated with that specific requirement. So Wave Tool is a really great resource. You can also get it as a as an add-on, a browser add-on. I use Chrome, and so if you go to the Chrome store, you can just download the Wave Tool as an add-on, and you can turn it on and off on the page, as opposing to have to paste the link directly. The only thing to keep in mind when using the add-on is that if you are linked into this, if you are logged in to your site as an editor, it might flag a bunch of things that are not necessarily an issue. So if you're going to use this, make sure you're logged out of your site when you do check it. If you use this Wave add-on through Chrome, I believe they have one through Firefox and other browsers as well, but so I'm gonna stop sharing and look at the chat. What happens to screen readers if there is bold, italics, or all caps text? Where can I find guidance on this? Okay, Kat, that's a really good question. So not all screen readers are made the same, and not all of them function the same. There are, there's some that are paid, there's some that are free. For example, Macs come with a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. PCs come with, I forget the name of the one that comes built in. There's one called JAWS. I mean, there's a number of different ones, and they don't all do the same thing. Typically, sometimes with all caps, how a screen reader will read that to a user, it's like they're yelling. And so they will read letter by letter as opposed to reading the whole word as a word. So if it's all caps, it'll read letter by letter. That also happens with URLs. So if you're not using descriptive link text to link to your URLs, sometimes a screen reader will read out the entire URL to the user, http:// and then it'll go on to read the rest of it, which can, if it's a really long URL, that affects the user experience. As far as bold and italics go, that shouldn't be a problem using those. Where it does become a problem if you're bolding an entire paragraph or using bold as a header instead of using a proper heading structure, then it will get, then it's not, sometimes a screen reader, a lot of times people will pull up an outline of your page, and that outline is based on your heading structure, your links. It's based on the hierarchy of your page. So if you're using just bolded paragraph text for a header, your user is not going to know that that's a header section. It's just going to be marked as paragraph. Really, it just shows as they're going through the paragraph that there is an emphasis made on that text for importance, if that makes sense, Kat. Did that answer your question? I just use bold a lot in emails and Word documents without the heading meaning to show importance. So I would start using, especially in Word documents, use the built-in heading structures that are available, and you can customize those to look the way that you want. And so take a look at our YouTube video that we just recorded on how to create accessible documents. as a resource. And then there's a number of other Word document resources out there aside from what we've done as well that are, you know, just quick and dirty, easy resources to use. But use bold as emphasis of text, not as a heading structure. In email, that's a little bit different because you don't have a heading structure in email. You have to, you know, approach things a little bit differently. So that's probably a use case that you might be able to do that, but definitely in documents and on the web, don't use all bolded text, but italics is also used for emphasis as well. So, well, it's 11:02. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you for joining today.